One of Australia's ex-Home Affairs chiefs is warning of potential incoming terror attacks. Former Department Secretary Mike Pezzullo believes the world is likely to see more terror attacks similar to the one in New Orleans. He claims the Islamic State movement will exploit frustration over Palestine in Muslim communities. Mr Pezzullo's comments echo warnings from experts that the overthrow of Syria's Assad regime will pave the way for a revitalised ISIS. And for more on that, I'm joined by Australia Strategic Policy Institute Senior Analyst Malcolm Davis. Malcolm, thanks for your time this morning. Do you agree with Mike Pezzullo there?
Yes, I do. Look, I think that was the first thing that occurred to me when the events in Syria unfolded in the way they did so quickly, that you could see a power vacuum emerging, which groups like ISIS would then seek to fill and expand their control. And I think at the same time, we have this very volatile situation regarding Israel's defense against Hamas and Hezbollah that radical Islamist groups will take advantage of. So I do think there is a combination there that would see an increasing threat from Islamist-inspired terrorism.
Yeah, so you think that we could be seeing a resurgence of ISIS in the near term?
I think so, and it's something that the US and its allies operating in Syria do need to prevent. And so that will require much more decisive military action against ISIS in the region to make sure that they cannot, as I said, fill that power vacuum that exists there at the moment.
And he also claims that ISIS may exploit frustration over Palestine within Muslim communities.
Exactly. You know, I would fully expect them to do so. And the linkages between Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and at the other extreme, ISIS, I think are quite worrying. So I do think that you do have this combination of factors that are coming together that could see in coming years the return of ISIS as a real threat. They've essentially laid dormant for the last year or two, but they could come back now, and then we would have to deal with them overseas, but also potentially here in Australia as well.
And there has been concerns about copycat attacks, and there was even a suggestion that the New Orleans attack may have been inspired by the German Christmas market attack 10 days earlier. Do you think that's a possibility?
Absolutely. I mean, the similarities are very clear, and clearly this individual, probably acted alone, as the information is now suggesting. And so he probably thought, well, the Magdeburg attack is a perfect example of what he could do with a truck. And inflict a lot of casualties very quickly. And the only reason he succeeded was because the New Orleans authorities failed to secure the area properly, including, the use of bollards and so forth.
Is Australia more or less prepared to deal with a New Orleans-style terrorist attack, in your view, than the US?
Look, I'm not a security expert in that sense in terms of counterterrorism measures, but my perception of these sorts of attacks is it's very difficult to prevent these sorts of attacks if someone is determined to get through. You can take protective measures, as I mentioned, using extendable bollards to prevent access for a vehicle into a particular area. But someone with a high-powered rifle can then get out and shoot people, or use a truck bomb, or use a car bomb, or whatever. So I think that it is very difficult to secure an urban area against terrorist attacks. What the best measure is to prevent those sorts of attacks is good intelligence. And luckily, Australia has excellent intelligence services in the form of ASIO and ASIS that can work together with the police to prevent these sorts of attacks from happening.
Is Donald Trump going to have to deal with a heightened tempo of terrorist attacks in his second term? And if so, what implications will that have for Australia?
I think he will. And I think that Trump will probably be much more willing to take the fight to terrorism than in the past. And I think that all his rhetoric seems to suggest that's the case. And I think that what needs to happen is for Australia, working with the US and its other allies, to step up and do much more, not only against countering terrorism, but in general defence policy as well. To ensure that Western liberal democracies are safe and secure. So we need to recognise that we're going into an enhanced threat environment, and we need to step up as a nation, spend more on defence, spend more on counter-terrorism, and actually take a much more robust and active role in preventing these sorts of attacks.
Good to see you, Malcolm. Thanks for coming on the program this morning. Malcolm Davis there.